Hey guys, this is Fergal from Poker VIP, and welcome to part 1 of Moving Up the Stakes on Guts. We're going to be playing a 4-part series where we will be starting off at one of the lower limits, playing some 4NL, and we're going to be moving up gradually through the limits as the series progresses. So part 2 we're going to be playing 10NL, part 3 we're going to be playing 20NL, and then part 4 we're going to be doing a mismatch where we're playing all 3 limits at once, one table of each, and kind of going through the key differences that we've discussed throughout the series as we go. So without further ado, we're going to jump straight into the action. We have 3 reg tables up and running, 2 anonymous and 1 non-anonymous, so we have usernames and so on here. We're not using a HUD or anything like that, so there's no real difference between the tables. They're all the exact same for all intents and purposes. And without further ado, we'll jump straight into the action. So as mentioned already, it's a live play video. We're just going to be playing our standard game and talking through each and every situation as they arise, and showing you how to beat up these games essentially. So we get dealt with an ace and a queen to start off with on the button, which is a perfectly reasonable holding. We're obviously going to be opening here for value. We get a caller, we definitely don't mind that. And he just insta-mucks, which is, I mean, just so dumb. It makes no sense to do that ever. I mean, no matter what he had there, he was live, right? And that's going to happen a lot of the time, so it just makes absolutely zero sense to open fold there, because I mean, I was going to check back that flop, so I can understand that on the river if you don't want to show your hand down. Open folding on the flop though just makes no sense at all. So we're going to go for 3-bet bluff here with the ace and the 3 of the same suit. Board comes king high, which we're going to have more king X in our range than he is, hence ace king and stuff like that. We have the backdoor flush draw, as well as some backdoor Broadway potential. We are going to have a wager here and try to get him to fold a pocket pair or any sort of, you know, pocket 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, those types of hands, as well as better aces like ace queen, ace jack that don't want to call with a gut shot can definitely fold there as well. We get that through, which is obviously what we wanted. And it was only a min open here in the top left table, so we're going to defend the jack 8 off suit and see a flop. This guy just min donks. We certainly can't fold jack 8 here. We're not going to be looking to invest too much more money here, though, at any point. This guy pots it. We're just going to let it go, obviously. We would have river trips. Even that's not guaranteed to be ahead, of course, but pretty decent chance it was. But we're not going to be too concerned with what would have come. We know we would have been making an unprofitable call, despite what the actual result would have been. So we're only ever concerning ourselves with the long run, of course. We don't care about the whether our flush would have gotten there or anything like that. If we know it's not a profitable call in the long run, we're not going to make it, and we're not going to be too concerned with any of the cards that pop up afterwards, allowing us to know whether we did or did not get there, or would not have gotten there, should I say. It's always one of my pet peeves if I'm playing with friends or anything like that. Sometimes we kind of hang out and we play in the same room, and someone kind of saying, "Oh, I should have called there. I would have had, you know, trips, or I would have flopped 2 pair or something like that." And it's like, well, you can't really be thinking that way, because if you made the fold, you felt it was the best decision at the time, and you can only work off of the information they have available to you, of course. We would have gone for a squeeze here with the queen and the 10. This guy elects to ice, or sorry, would have gone for the ISO, should I say. This guy elects to do so beforehand, so we're just going to go ahead and fold. We don't have too many reads we don't have any reads in this table or anything like that. We don't know if this guy recognizes this as a good spot to be ISOing or anything like that. So if he does, I mean, if we think that guy is a reasonable player, we could consider attacking him with a hand like queen 10. It has a decent amount of Broadway blockers and things like that. But out of position, without any reads, I think it's going to be better off just making the fold rather than trying to get creative and essentially gambling and hoping that he is the kind of player that we want him to be, basically. The a7 suited, we are going to be bringing it in. We're going to be 4xing it here to discourage action from this dude who has posted his big blind. He's probably going to be not a very good player. Anyone who posts their big blind tend to not be one of the regular players. This board is really a disaster for us. We're not going to be putting any more money in at any point. He just flopped straight and just didn't put any more money in at any point, which I think is a mistake. I do understand, you know, wanting to slow play and things like that, but you've got to start betting at some point yourself. That is just mandatory. Like, I'd shown no interest in putting any more money in there. I can definitely be pot controlling with like lone pocket pairs and stuff like that may call a river bet. I think his flop check is standard, his turn check is reasonable, and his river check I think is pretty poor. the ace and the king, we will be playing aggressively, of course. Unfortunately, we don't get an opportunity to do so, we just get given the walk. But fortunately, we get dealt the ace and the king again, which is fine by me. And we're going to be going for the 3-bet again with the ace and the 6 of the same suit. We don't see a flop this time. I think that was the same player that we 3-bet a moment ago. That's a fun flop for us with the 3 and the 10. It's the kind of board that I expect to check through pretty regularly, and we don't really want that to happen. So we're just going to go ahead and lead ourselves and put a hand like King X or Queen X in an awkward spot, or if someone has the lone ace of hearts or anything like that, we want to make sure that we're charging them. We just get the walk, which isn't what we wanted, but as I said, it's the kind of board where I don't think people are going to be kind of c-betting, bluffing on it too frequently, especially multi-way. And they're going to be checking back a lot of their pocket pairs and stuff like that also, so betting seems superior to me there rather than checking it back. So we go ahead and we c-bet with the ace-king on the queen-high board. A heart rolls out, so his flush draws have gotten there, and he can also have Queen X here, so he decides to lead on the heart. I mean, our hand it's almost impossible for it to be ahead here. He'd want to be a very, very creative player to be running any sort of bluff this way, so we're just going to have to let it go. All in for the flip with the 10s versus the ace-king. Ace-king outruns the 10s, and it looks like we're going to lose a player unless they elect to rebuy. He does not. He has sat out, so hopefully he doesn't take up the seat for too long. He has left, so hopefully we get a 6th player back in business fairly shortly. The ace and the 9 has some potential to be played. I think we're going to go ahead and as I said, we're going to stick with our strategy. We're not going to be getting too wildly out of line, but we will. Like we can definitely 3-bet light. That's not getting crazy out of line. We're not going to be doing any sort of creative 4-bet bluffs or anything like that, but we will be attacking 3-bets to a fairly decent degree. Mainly because microstakes players don't tend to play well in 3-bet pots, and a lot of the time they do tend to overfold 3-bets as well. Just because in general at these tables, from what I've seen, people don't tend to 3-bet too much, so they're not used to dealing with it. So when they do see it, they assume it is stronger than it is when it's coming from me, especially. So they will overfold because the global pool population are 3-betting quite tight. So it's just one of those spots where they need specific reads on me specifically, which is hard to get, especially because we're playing in non-tables. So we're gonna exploit those tendencies, and we are going to be putting in the light 3-bets, and we're going to be looking to play post-flop poker in 3-bet pots, which we are very comfortable with, and a lot of other people are not. So we will definitely have an edge there over everyone at these tables, I would imagine. The ace and the 10, pretty trivial open from under the gun. Sorry, that's not trivial, it's close to the bottom of my range, but some people don't include the offsuit ace-10s, but I think it is a mistake in doing so. Especially, as I said, going back to my point a moment ago, if you're playing at a table where you have an edge, especially a post-flop edge, you want to be playing as many hands as you think you can get away with. An ace-10 will be a profitable hand to open there, provided you do have a post-flop edge, of course. If you don't have a post-flop edge, then you've got some work to do in your game in order to make sure that you actually are beating the games, because that's the key area to work on, of course. 6-10 down here, we are not going to be doing anything apart from letting it go. We're just going to be making that fold. And the ace straight from the button, pretty trivial open. Any ace from the button is always going to be good enough to go for a steal. Not a very good board for us. I think betting is still better than checking. It's marginal though. We pick up a gut shot, which is not insignificant, so we're just going to check back here, and if we improve, we will bet the river, if we hit an ace or if we hit a 4. And we're just, I was kind of going to say I expect him to lead here a fairly hefty percentage of the time, and we're just going to go ahead and fold, which is fine. It seems very hard for him not to have at least a pair there. Pocket 7s, we will probably be playing up in the top right table. It's just folded around to us. Easy open, we take it down, no problems. 6-8. We would have opened here if it was folded to us, but we are just going to let it go. Facing another gun open, trying to get tricky with this kind of hand would be a mistake. We have an ace-king of the same colour. We will be playing this one aggressively, of course. So it's been a raise and a call. We are going to squeeze it up, make it an additional 40 cent on top. Could have actually gone a little bit larger here. I'm going to start off with a check here, and not necessarily a check fold. We're ahead of all of his ace-x, except, you know, like hands like ace-10 and stuff like that, but I'm not sure how likely he is to have a hand like ace-10. We're going to make a light call down here with the ace and the king. So just to talk you through my thought process there, as I said, I mean, he can have pocket pairs there, but I'm just not sure how much he's going to be betting his pocket pairs there for value for 2 streets. He can have 10x, definitely. Like 10, if we're beat there, I expect it to be 10x and 10x only. And all of the rest of his hands I expect him to be bluffing with, basically. And when we check the flop there, we allow him to bluff those types of hands. So we get, obviously, that's not like a fantastically slam dunk. Like, it's not a great spot for us to be calling down with, but it will be a profitable call down against most people's ranges there. And unfortunately, we get to show one of the times where we are right. We are going to be wrong there, a reasonable percentage of the time as well, of course, though. King tray suited, it's not a very good hand, but there was just a min raise followed by a call, so we're getting a really good price. We have a suited king. It can never be that bad flicking in an extra big blind to see a flop. Even with our pair, although we are getting 4-1 here with the back door. Okay, we're going to call and see a turn. We have the flush draw to go along with our pair, so a decent number of cards that can give us added equity. And it's pretty hard for us, like, I mean, any king or any tray will almost certainly give us the best hand as well. Unless you run into ace-king, which is obviously unfortunate. We're not planning on putting any more money in here at any point, though. Calling down with bottom pair there would be pretty optimistic in a 3-way pot. So the king and the tray, we're going to let this one go, and the king 7 same over on the top left table. Ace-king of black. Let's see if we can have a repeat performance and win ourselves a tidy pot. This guy 5x's it, which is unusual. We are still going to go ahead and 3-bet. We're going to 3-bet reasonably large because we're going to, like, I mean, if this guy's overplaying a hand like ace-queen or something like that, we want to give him the maximum opportunity to invest all of the money. And if he has a pocket pair, I mean, realistically, we're just going to be going with our hand anyway, so I don't see any reason to slow down. We're going to check back this board, and we pick up a flush draw as well as our good shot to the nutter butters, and we bink the flush on the river, which is fantastic. Obviously trivial call, and that is a pretty sick run out for our opponent with 20 flops top set. But I mean, I would have assumed he would just be getting jacks in there pre. I don't see why he doesn't, but whatever. We're not gonna mind too much. Checking back the flop there, we could consider a bet on the flop there. It doesn't seem absurd with the overcards and the gut shot to the nuts. Checking back seems perfectly reasonable as well. Then when we pick up the flush draw, I don't think we can ever consider folding. As I said, with that much equity, that many outs to the stone cold nuts. And I mean, obviously we were against the set there, but a lot of the time our aces and our kings will, or at least some of them will be live as well. So we have to factor that in as well. So we have a lot of equity going in against our overall opponent's range. He's of course not just limited to sets there. And occasionally we have the best hand as well. He can have ace-queen. He can definitely have ace-queen and be bluffing. So 2 nice little pots there with the ace-king of spades. And we are up a little bit of money now for the session, which is always fun. Always fun to record a winning session. Touch wood, as long as it stays this way. Okay, we are going to just check back with the jack 7 of blue. Pretty okay flop, obviously. And we're gonna go ahead and just lead out here now and try to get this guy to fold, hand like ace high or something like that. And if he does call, obviously we have reasonable equity with our solid flush draw. When he just checks back, we're going to assume that it's basically impossible for him to have a flush. That is a very good flop again, obviously, for us. We're going to start this off with a check. And we're going to start... Actually, we're just going to check again here, because if someone has a 10, they're likely going to bet it for us. So leading here will allow 10s to just call. Whereas now we can go for the raise and look to jam rivers. So we're just going to go an amount that will allow us to... We're still going to have to overbet river a little bit, but we will be able to. Unfortunately, he folds there. When he did bet, I felt there was a very high chance that he had a 10, and we wanted to make sure that we stacked a 10, basically. So if we just check call there, and he does have 10, and a jack, queen, king, or ace rolls off, and he doesn't have one of those hands, doesn't have one of those cards, it just means it's very, very difficult to get paid. Whereas one of the biggest mistakes that microstakes players make is overvaluing their top pair hands. So I think it's very unlikely he folds a 10 there, even though he probably should when we're showing that much strength on that board, because it's so hard for us to be bluffing there. We get min raised here. We're obviously calling and trying to improve. If he bets again here, we are probably just going to fold, especially when he chooses the sizing. It's entirely possible we're drawing dead there. I mean, not all that likely, but possible. So something that we have to consider. And he's just gone huge, so we're not getting the right price to draw in the situations where we are live. And obviously it's very, very unlikely that we have the best hand as well with the board that's in it. I think that hand is pretty standard, very standard open, pretty standard c-bet there. We can get some better hands to fold that have low pairs in them, and we always have decent equity basically, unless we're against specifically the ace-x of hearts. I don't think the ace of hearts was out at least. So we were drawing to the second nut, so it's possible someone has top pair with the nut flush draw, in which case we are in a world of hurt, but that's obviously not going to happen too often, so we're not going to be overly concerned with that. 4-5 suited from under the gun. We could have considered bringing that in for an open, but in general, people do tend to overvalue suited connectors quite substantially. The reality of them is, in kind of 100 big blind poker, they're not all that great. There's some very specific situations in which they are good. I mean, playing them for a cheap amount of money in multi-way pots is like very, very attractive, but kind of playing them in 3-bet pots, playing them heads up, it's not really all that good, because they're just not going to flop. They're just not going to hit strong enough hands often enough where you get paid to turn a solid profit in the long run with them, basically. So ace jack, we are obviously opening. We get called by player 2 here to our immediate left. Let's see if we can flop something fun. Player 5 goes for the squeeze, and we're going to go ahead and just make a tight fold here. It's entirely possible that we're folding a better hand here, but there's just way too many hands that he's taking this line with that we are in trouble against. And even in position, it's just going to be a relatively tricky hand to play. This is kind of going back to my assumptions that as we spoke about earlier on, that we're going to assume that 3-bet ranges are generally fairly value heavy until we have a reason to think otherwise. Okay, we have a king and a 10 of green on the bottom left table. We are going to fold now. We were going to go for 3-bet ourselves, but when the small blind does that, that is what we are going to do. We can't really do anything versus this guy. He's showing a lot of strength here by 3-betting, and that's why we were going to do it, because it just looks like a fairly nutted line. We would have sized up a little bit. It does look like this guy would have called regardless, but it's entirely possible for our larger size that he might not have. We would have c-bet this flop, so let's see how the hand would have gone down. So we would have bet about this sizing, and he would have folded, so it would have been a profitable spot for us there. Unfortunately, the small blind got there before us, though, so hey, can't be too upset. We can't begrudge him that, right? King 4 suited, nothing we're going to be able to do there versus the limp and the ISO. Ace queen, though, we will be ISOing if the button limps, or 3-betting if they raise any sort of normal size. Which he does, and which we do. So we're going to make it 42 to go, an extra 30 cent on top for him if he wants to continue. He folds. I mean, obviously we would have liked some action there. We have a strong holding, but it's, again, not a disaster by any stretch. We're going to go ahead and call here. Because this table has not been overly 3-bet happy, we're going to be able to see a lot of multi-way flops here with this kind of hand pretty frequently, which is a good thing. Very fun flop over on the top left table. We have the nut flush draw with a gut shot. So it's just a case now of whether we want to just raise, get it in. I think with this much equity in our holding, that's what we're going to do. We're just going to go ahead and raise, play it straightforwardly, and not fold if this guy wants to get it in. If we take it down at this juncture, we have ace high. Fine result. It's somewhat possible that he gets in worse. Like, he can get in like worse flush draws, for example, which is just phenomenal for us. And I mean, if he has a pair or something like that, we're obviously always in very good shape there. And even if he has a set, or even if he flopped the straight, we're still in okay-ish equity terms. If he flops like the nut straight or something like that, obviously it's a bit of a disaster for us. We're only drawing to the flush, but those kinds of situations aren't going to arise all that often. So we just pick it up without a fight with ace high, which is fine, given that it was a reasonable sized pot. And if we had gotten action, it also would have been fine. King 4 suited, nothing we're going to be able to do there other than stick it in the muck. Wet enough board here on the top left table, some potential for some action here. There is a bet, there is a raise, there is a call. I wouldn't be shocked to see this guy get all of his chips in the middle on this board, given the action, and apparently not. Kind of hard. He's not really repping that much here. It's kind of, yeah. I didn't see the two holdings there. I saw 10-6. What was the exact board? I don't actually know if you can bring up the last hand there on that table. No, the anonymous tables you cannot. Did he have a straight there? I didn't think he had a pair there, but I don't understand. I mean, I can understand a light call down there definitely versus the king 8, because when he checks the turn again, it's just really, really hard for him to have that much strong value. Like, if he had a set, if he had anything like that, or two pair, anything like that, it just makes absolute sense that he bets the turn again. Checking the turn with strong value there and not allowing to play for stacks unless your opponent wants to is a blunder in my mistake. So I would definitely understand a pretty light call down there and expect to see a fairly high percentage of flush draws. Alright, we're going to lead our 3 high here and try to take this down without a fight. And if not, let's go to plan B and get there, which is what we do. I'm just going to bet again and bet for value. And we get paid, we'll take it. Obviously a nice little run out for us. I think our line makes perfect sense though. No one showed too much strength, so if we can just take it down with the bet on the turn, fantastic. We have 3 high, we always have equity, or we almost always have good equity at least reasonable equity with the flush draw, and when we hit the flush draw we just got to bet for value. He's going to be checking back way too much of his showdown value on that run out, so there's no real value in checking to induce or anything like that there. The only hand that would make sense to check against would be if we expect him to have many other flush draws, so the spades for example, which we don't really expect him to have, given that he just checked on the flop. We're just going to re-raise, get it in here versus player 3. We're just going to 3-exit here, make a fairly pot-committing size, and we'll have pot left if he just flat calls on the. If he just flat calls, we'll have pot left on the flop. We're never considering folding here, so we're just kind of considering what's the best way to get him. If he has a hand like ace queen, what's the best way to get him to make a mistake? We're going to bet small and just call off if he jams. His fold is also reasonable. We could also consider checking there, but I think just jamming ourselves or just betting ourselves is a bit better. Checking does seem reasonable as long as we're never planning on check folding on the flop at least. Anyway, there are some turn cards that would concern us, but ace king there on the flop with an SPR of just 1 is a pretty easy get in there. 10 and the jack facing and under the gun open. We are going to be doing that folding thing and letting our hand go. top right table. There has been a bet and a call, and a flush card is rolled off. So potential for some fireworks here, depending on villain's holdings, of course. Ace 10 floated that flop with overs and backdoors. Doesn't seem crazy. Out of position, I'm not a huge fan of it, but doesn't seem bizarre. Deuce 9 in the big blind. There's nothing we're going to be able to do there, unfortunately. Hopefully we get a walk. That would be living the dream, but we're not overly optimistic about that happening. 3 more folds, and it has, though. We folded a pair here. It was a 4-way pot, and with the potential flush draw on board, calling with second pair wouldn't be crazy, but it's also a little bit optimistic in the sense that I mean, we're gonna have the best hand there a reasonable percentage of the time, but there's so many bad runouts for us and so few good ones that continuing there is just gonna be tricky to turn a profit with. So we have the tops of the pairs with a very reasonable kicker. We just flat called here pre. We're just going to go for the check and the call. This guy has a better ace. He is more than likely going to win a reasonable sized pot. When he checks back here, I don't expect him to have too much too often. I think we're just going to check and try to get him to bluff at it again on the river. If he has no showdown, which is entirely possible. So he bots, so we're just going to check call here. And he has the jack and the 8, so we do pick up some added value there by allowing our opponent to take another stab. Raising, it's important to note there, like raising that river obviously makes no sense at all, because with his pot sizing, he's like really polarized himself, so he either has a bluff or a hand that has a lot of strong value. So trying to raise there for value ourselves would be absurd. Flopping 2 pair, we were hoping he was going to do something bonkers. Unfortunately, he did not, but hey, not a bad result. So overall for the session, we are up a decent amount. We're up over a buy-in here, almost a buy-in here, and half a buy-in here. So 2.5 buy-ins and a half an error. Not too shabby at all. I may have had to rebuy on one of the tables at one point. I'm not entirely sure. I can't actually recall. I don't think we've lost a stack since we started recording. But we may have needed to top up a small amount here and there. But in general, that's I don't think so. I think we kind of started winning on most tables immediately, if not all. So we'll take it. A decent result. We're going to be wrapping it up now fairly shortly. We're coming up to the half-hour mark. And as I said, if you enjoyed what you have seen, if you have any questions, queries, comments, feedback, anything like that at all, make sure to leave them on the relevant social media. I check the Facebook comments fairly frequently, along with the comments over on Poker VIP and so on. And if you have any questions, you want to discuss a hand in more detail or anything like that, feel free to fire them at me, and I will endeavour to get back to you within a reasonable timeline. You can also contact me directly over on Poker VIP as well, of course. But we have another minute or two to be played before we will wrap it up, though. And then, as I said, we're going to be back for part 2, which will be 10NL. So moving up the limits slowly but surely. Ace Queen suited. Let's see if we can round out the video with a decent result. Not a very good flop for us. Heads up, though, our Ace Queen does still rank to be the best hand relatively often. We're not going to fold here if he leads. We're certainly not folding if he leads, especially to the min lead. Makes it even easier. King is interesting. I don't think he should have that much King X. I'm going to call again. I mean, if we're beat here, I mean, he can have some 9x that plays this way. I don't like it if he does with his small sizings, but it's possible. If he has a king, then we got unlucky, unless he has exactly ace-king, which seems unlikely. But bluffs just seem like they're going to account for too much of his range to ever consider folding there, and we were correct, so we'll take it. Not a big pot, but still a pot nonetheless. Still a pot nonetheless. Alright, with that hand, I think we're going to wrap it up there now, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it, and make sure to tune in for part 2 as well. I'll talk to you all soon. Thank you very much. Take care.